Come get me. Morgana's voice cracked on those 3 words. Mascara-stained tears dripped onto the cream bridesmaid dress she'd spent $800 on, the one her mother had ordered in a size 10 when Morgana wore a 16 as motivation. The pearls at her throat, borrowed but never gifted, felt like a collar. Stay with me because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, tomorrow I'm dropping another one you won't want to miss. Now let's dive back in. Fedro's voice came through the phone like thunder rolling over marble, dark, Italian smooth, and lethal. Tell me where you are, Tesoro. I'm already in the car. Hey there. To understand how Morgana and Drizzy ended up crying in a parking lot while her own sister's wedding celebrated everything she wasn't, we need to go back. Back to a family that used her talent but hid her body. Back to an Italian mafia boss who looked at her curves like they were Renaissance art. Stick around. This is about what happens when a woman who's been made invisible finally calls on a man who sees her as the only thing worth looking at. 8 months earlier, Morgana stood in the half-finished ballroom of Paradiso, Fedro Sal's private club, directing contractors with the precision of a battlefield general. The space was all exposed brick, gold leaf accents, and dangerous men in tailored suits pretending they weren't watching her every move. Afternoon light poured through floor-to-ceiling arched windows, catching the natural volume of her afro like a halo as she gestured toward the cathedral ceiling. The chandelier drops 8 more inches, she called up to the rigging crew, iPad balanced in one hand while the other traced an arc through the air. And someone needs to explain to me why these drapes are champagne when I specified ivory. We don't do close enough in my designs. Her team moved like an orchestra under her direction, 3 assistants cross-referencing measurements while the lead contractor barked orders in Spanish to the lighting crew. Morgana had learned young that confidence was survival. In spaces like this, expensive and male-dominated and clearly lethal, you didn't apologize for existing. You made them grateful you showed up. She didn't flinch when one of Fedro's men walked past, the bulge of a shoulder, holster visible under his tailor jacket. She had a vision to execute, and Morgana and Drizzy always delivered. Her portfolio was filled with A-list venues across Manhattan and the Hamptons, each one a testament to her ability to transform raw space into environments that made wealthy people feel like they'd stepped into a dream. This project would be her crown jewel if she could just get the proportions right. Ms. and Drizzy, one of her assistants appeared at her elbow, tablet extended. The marble samples you requested. They're saying the Carrara won't be available until next month. Morgana studied the screen, her full lips pursing in concentration. Then we go with the Calicut. Tell them I want slabs, not tiles, and if they argue about the budget, refer them to Mr. Sal's office. This room deserves better than compromise. From the mezzanine overlooking the ballroom, Fedro Sal watched her with the focused intensity of a wolf who'd just scented something rare. His second-in-command, Luca, stood beside him with a tablet full of security reports that were currently being ignored. "Boss, you're staring," Lucas said carefully. Fedro didn't look away from the woman commanding his renovation like she owned it. She was full-figured in ways that made his hands itch, all curves and presence wrapped in dark jeans and a cream blazer that somehow remained pristine despite the construction dust. Her natural hair framed her face in a glorious cloud, and when she smiled at something one of her assistants said, the entire room seemed to brighten. "Find out everything about her," Fedro said quietly. "I can pull her file from the contractor registry. I think her name's Morgana and Drizzy, graduated top of her class from Parsons, built her firm from nothing over the past 6 years. Not paperwork." Fedro's dark eyes never left her. His hands, tattooed, knuckles resting on the iron railing, flexed once. "Everything else. Who makes a woman that brilliant work this hard? Who taught her to make herself small when she walks into a room?" Luca glanced down at Morgana, then back at his boss. He'd served under Fedro Sal for 12 years and had never seen this particular expression on his face. It was hunger, yes, but also something more deliberate, more consuming. You want me to look into her family? Her finances? Everything, Fedro repeated, his Italian accent thickening slightly. By tomorrow morning. Below them, Morgana had moved to the center of the ballroom, arms spread as she explained something to the acoustics engineer. Her voice carried up to the mezzanine, warm and confident and musical. She was explaining how sound would move through the space once it was filled with bodies and music, how the design would create intimate pockets within the grandeur. This isn't just a club, she said, turning in a slow circle that made her blazer flare slightly at her hips. It's experience. When people walk through those doors, I want them to feel like they've been let into a secret, like they found something precious that the rest of the world doesn't know about. Fedro's jaw tightened. The way she spoke about creating sanctuary, about making people feel precious, told him everything he needed to know about how she'd been treated. People who'd been cherished didn't understand sanctuary like that, didn't speak about it with that particular hunger. She's good, Luca observed, watching Morgana crouch down to examine a floor seam, her movements graceful despite her height and curves. The work she did on the Rothschild wedding last year was legendary. They say she turned a warehouse into a palace. She's better than good, Fedro murmured. She's extraordinary. The afternoon stretched on, and Fedro found himself unable to leave his position on the mezzanine. He should have been in his office reviewing shipping manifests and meeting with his captains about the new territory agreements. But instead, he watched Morgana solve problems. She was patient with her team, firm with the contractors, and absolutely uncompromising about her vision. When one of the electricians tried to tell her something couldn't be done, she pulled up schematics on her iPad and walked him through exactly how it could be done, her finger tracing circuits and load calculations until the man nodded in defeated admiration. Around 5 o'clock, she dismissed most of her team but stayed behind with her head assistant, a thin man with excellent taste in shoes who kept making her laugh. Fedro watched her pull out a sketchbook and start drawing modifications by hand, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. The late afternoon light turned her skin to warm bronze, and he found himself imagining what it would feel like under his hands. He'd built an empire on patience and precision. He could wait, could learn everything about her before he made his move, could ensure that when he finally approached her, he'd know exactly how to make her say yes. But watching her work, watching her create beauty out of raw space with nothing but vision and determination, Fedro Sal discovered that patience had limits. Boss, Luca's voice interrupted his thoughts. The meeting with the Albanians starts in 20 minutes. Cancel it, Fedro said, straightening his cuffs. Reschedule for tomorrow. But they flew in from Tirana specifically for this. Then they can spend an evening enjoying the city. Fedro adjusted his tie, eyes still locked on the woman in his ballroom. I have more important business. Luca's eyebrows rose, but he was too well-trained to comment. He simply nodded and stepped back, already pulling out his phone to handle the diplomatic nightmare of canceling on the Albanians with less than half an hour's notice. Fedro descended the curved staircase to the main floor, his Italian leather shoes making no sound on the marble. He'd learned long ago how to move through spaces without announcing his presence, a skill that had saved his life more than once. Now he used it to observe. Morgana was explaining something to her assistant about the bar area, gesturing toward the long wall where he'd planned to install the main serving station. She wanted it angled differently, wanted better flow, wanted customers to feel embraced by the space rather than separated from it. Her hands moved through the air like she was conducting music only she could hear. The whole point is intimacy, she was saying. Even in a room this size, every person should feel like they matter. Like they're not just another body taking up space. Not just another body taking up space. The phrase landed in Fedro's chest like a blade. He stepped fully into her line of sight, and her assistant noticed him first. The man's eyes widened slightly, recognizing danger even wrapped in an expensive suit. Morgana followed his gaze and turned, and for a moment, Fedro watched something flicker across her face. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. Like some part of her knew exactly what he was even if her mind hadn't caught up yet. Mr. Sal, she said, and her voice carried that same warm professionalism she'd used with everyone else. but he heard the slight catch in her breath, saw the way her fingers tightened on her iPad. I wasn't expecting to see you today. It's my club, Fedro said simply, moving closer. I like to keep track of my investments. Of course. She smiled, that professional mask sliding into place. We're making excellent progress. The structural work should be complete by the end of next week, and then we can begin the finish installations. I can see that. You work like a general commanding an army. Something genuine flickered in her smile then. My mother used to say I was bossy. I prefer to think of it as knowing what I want. And do you always get what you want, Ms. Andrizzi? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that had nothing to do with interior design. Morgana's assistant suddenly became very interested in something on his phone, taking several steps away to give them privacy. In my work? Usually. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with those intelligent dark eyes. In the rest of my life? That's more complicated. Why complicated? She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Because wanting things and being allowed to have them are two very different experiences. Fedro absorbed that, filed away with all the other pieces of information he was collecting about this woman. Then perhaps you've been asking permission from the wrong people. Before she could respond, her phone chimed. She glanced at it, and he watched her entire body tense. Just a fraction, but he saw it. Saw the way her shoulders curved inward slightly, the way her expression shifted from confident professional to something more guarded. I'm sorry, she said, already gathering her things. I need to wrap up here. I have to be somewhere by 10. It was only 7:30. Fedro filed that away too. Of course, though I was hoping you might join me for dinner. To discuss the project. That's very kind, but I really can't tonight. She was moving now, calling to her assistant, packing up her equipment with practiced efficiency. Perhaps another time. She left within minutes, professional to the last, thanking him for the opportunity and promising updates by email. Fedro watched her go, watched the way she moved faster the closer she got to the door, like something was chasing her. But like she was racing toward a cage before it locked her out. Luca appeared at his shoulder once more. Want me to have someone follow her? No, Fedro said quietly. I want you to find out why a successful business owner runs home at 7:30 on a Tuesday like she'll be punished if she's late. And I want to know by morning. Because Fedro Sal had learned to read fear in all its forms. And what he'd seen in Morgana and Drizzy's eyes wasn't fear of him. It was fear of disappointing someone who'd taught her that her want for complicated, that permission could be withheld, that taking up space was something to apologize for. And that was completely unacceptable. By morning, Luca had a file on Morgana and Drizzy that made Fedro's blood simmer with quiet rage. She lived in a guest house on her parents' estate in Westchester. She paid them $2,000 a month in rent. Her two younger sisters lived in the main house, rent-free. And according to the background check Luca had run through their contacts at the county clerk's office, Morgana had inherited a substantial trust from her grandmother 3 years ago. Her parents were the trustees until she turned 35. There's more, Lucas said, sliding a printed lease agreement across Fedro's desk. This is the rental contract for the guest house. Look at Clause 17. Fedro read it twice, his jaw tightening with each word. Tenant must return a property by 10 p.m. on weeknights and midnight on weekends. Violation of curfew results in additional fees. Multiple violations may result in termination of lease. She's 30 years old, Fedro said quietly, his accent thickening the way it always did when he was furious. And they gave her a curfew like she's a child. It gets worse. Her firm is successful, but most of her contracts come through her mother's social connections. Mrs. Andrizzi is on the board of half the charity organizations in Westchester. She controls access. Fedro set the papers down carefully, the way he did when he wanted to break something but knew violence wouldn't solve the problem. Not yet. So Morgana pays them rent with money she inherited, follows their rules to keep a roof over her head, and depends on her mother's referrals to keep her business alive. It's a cage made of contracts and social pressure, Luca agreed. And they built it specifically for her. Why her? Why not the other daughters? Luca hesitated, then pulled up a photo on his tablet. The Andrizzi family at some charity gala. Mother and two younger sisters, all slim and polished in designer gowns. And there was Morgana, standing slightly apart, her curves barely contained in a dress that looked like it had been tailored for someone else's body. Phaedro didn't need the explanation. He could see it in the photograph. In the way Morgana held herself like she was trying to take up less space, in the way her mother's hand rested on the younger daughter's shoulder while Morgana stood alone. "They're ashamed of her," he said flatly. "Looks like it. There's more photos like this going back years. She's always at the edge of the frame, always dressed wrong, always separate." Phaedro thought about the way Morgana had worked in his ballroom, confident and commanding and absolutely in her element. Then he thought about the way she'd checked her phone and suddenly deflated, rushing home like something precious would be taken away if she was late. "I want to see this for myself," he said, standing. "Tonight. What time does she usually leave her projects?" Based on the contractor logs, she's at Paradiso until about 8:30 most evenings. "Then I'll be there at 8. That evening, Phaedro arrived at his club to find Morgana exactly where he expected her, standing on a ladder adjusting the angle of the spotlight while her assistant held the base steady. She was wearing jeans again and a soft burgundy sweater that clung to her curves, and he took a moment just to watch her work, to see her in her element before the cage door swung shut. 3 degrees left, she called down. "There. Perfect. That's exactly the warmth we need." She climbed down, graceful despite the height, and that's when she saw him. Her smile was genuine, unguarded for just a moment before professionalism smoothed it into something more controlled. "Mr. Sal, 2 visits in 1 week. Should I be worried you don't trust my work?" "I trust your work completely," Phaedro said, moving closer. "I don't trust that you're taking care of yourself while you do it." "Have you eaten today?" The question clearly surprised her. "I had lunch." "That's not what I asked." She laughed, uncertain. "I'm fine, really. I grabbed a protein bar around 3. A protein bar is not dinner." He gestured toward his office on the mezzanine. "Come. I had my chef prepare too much food. You'll be doing me a favor." "That's very kind, but I really should finish up here and get home." Phaedro checked his watch. 8:15. "It's early yet. You have time." Something flickered across her face, that same trapped expression he'd seen before. "I appreciate it, but I have a schedule I need to keep." "What happens if you're late?" The question landed between them like a stone in still water. Morgana's fingers tightened on the tablet she was holding, and for a moment, he thought she might tell him the truth. Instead, she smiled that professional smile again. "Nothing dramatic. I just prefer to be responsible about my commitments." "Commitments to whom?" "Mr. Sal, I really need to go." She was gathering her things now, that same rushed energy he'd witnessed before. Her assistant appeared with her bag and coat, clearly accustomed to these sudden departures. Phaedro watched her check her phone, saw genuine anxiety flash across her face when she saw the time. 8:27. "Morgana," he said quietly, using her first name deliberately. She froze, looked up at him with those dark, intelligent eyes. "Who makes you afraid of being late?" "I'm not afraid. I'm just respectful of other people's time and boundaries." "Whose boundaries?" She opened her mouth, closed it again. For a moment, he saw the war happening behind her eyes, the instinct to defend versus the exhaustion of maintaining the lie. Exhaustion won. "My mother owns the house I live in," she said finally, quietly. "She has rules. I follow them. It's not complicated. You pay her rent." Morgana's head snapped up. "How did you know that?" "I make it my business to know about the people who work for me." He stepped closer, close enough to see the faint shadows under her eyes, the tightness at the corners of her mouth. "You're 30 years old and you have a curfew." "It's not a curfew. It's just a lease term." "It's a leash," Phaedro corrected softly. "And the woman holding it is your mother." He watched Morgana's throat work as she swallowed. Watched her blink back something that might have been tears. Her hands twisted the strap of her bag, and he noticed for the first time that her knuckles were slightly chapped, like she washed her hands obsessively, trying to scrub away the feeling of never being clean enough. "I should go," she whispered. "Yes, you should, before she adds another late fee to your rent." Phaedro let the words hang there, gentle and devastating. "But Morgana, this conversation isn't over." She fled then, not quite running but close, and Phaedra let her go. He'd learned patience in a profession where impatience got you killed. He could wait, could plan, could build a strategy for extracting her from that cage without breaking her in the process. But first, he needed to understand exactly how deep the prison went. "Luca," he said into his phone, watching Morgana's car peel out of the parking lot like something was chasing her. "I want surveillance on the Indrizzi estate. Discreet. I want to know every time Morgana arrives, how she's greeted, and what happens if she's even a minute late. Boss, that's her family. That's exactly why I need to know." Phaedra's voice dropped to something cold and absolute. Because family is supposed to be sanctuary, and what they've built for her is a cage. I want to know every bar before I start cutting them. He stood at the window long after her taillights disappeared, already planning, already calculating, already deciding that Morgana and Drizzy would never run home in fear again. Not once she understood that she had somewhere else she could run to instead. Somewhere that would never make her watch the clock or apologize for taking up space or shrink herself to fit through doors that should have opened wide to welcome her. She just didn't know it yet, but she would. Phaedra Sal always kept his promises, and he'd just made one to himself. That woman in his ballroom, the one who created sanctuary for others while living in a prison, was going to be free, even if he had to burn down her mother's entire world to do it. The contract arrived at Morgana's business email on a Thursday morning, and when she opened the attachment, she had to read the number 3 times before her brain would accept what she was seeing. Exclusive design services for all Sal family properties and affiliated businesses. 1-year term, renewable at contractor's discretion. $500,000 retainer, paid immediately upon signature. Additional project fees calculated separately at triple standard industry rates. Her hands shook so badly she had to set down her coffee mug before she dropped it. "Trevor," she called, her voice coming out strangled. Her business partner appeared in the doorway of their shared office space, concern creasing his face. "You need to see this right now." Trevor read over her shoulder, and she heard the exact moment he reached the retainer amount because he made a choking sound. "This is $500,000. I know, as a retainer, before the additional project fees that are somehow triple your already excellent rates. I know, Morgana." Trevor pulled up a chair, his voice dropping. "This is more money than our firm has made in the last 2 years combined. This has changed your entire life money." He scrolled down through the terms. "But exclusive services means you'd work only for him. No other clients for a full year." Morgana's mind was already racing ahead, calculating possibilities she'd never let herself consider before. $500,000 would mean freedom from her mother's guest house, from the late fees and the humiliation and the constant terror of being one violation away from homelessness. It would mean her own apartment, her own space, her own life lived without a 10 o'clock curfew like she was a teenager instead of a 30-year-old woman with a successful business. It would also mean belonging to Phaedra Sal in ways that had nothing to do with interior design. This is either the opportunity of a lifetime or the most dangerous proposition you've ever received, Trevor said carefully, watching her face. "Maybe both. Do you trust him? Did she?" Morgana thought about the way Phaedra watched her work, like she was composing symphonies instead of just selecting fabric swatches. Thought about how he'd somehow known about her curfew, about the rent she paid to her own parents, about the cage her family had built from contracts and social pressure. He could have used that information to manipulate her or pity her. Instead, he'd simply looked at her like the situation personally offended him. "I don't know if I trust him," she admitted quietly, "but I know I can't keep living like this." As if summoned by her desperation, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Cordelia's engagement party is September 15th. She needs full design and coordination. Family rate, obviously. Don't embarrass us." Family rate meant free. Full design and coordination meant 60 hours of work minimum. Don't embarrass us meant Morgana would be expected to be grateful for the opportunity to bankrupt herself for her sister's social climbing. She looked back at the contract on her laptop screen, at that number that represented everything her grandmother had probably wanted for her when she'd set up that trust. Independence, security, the ability to finally tell her mother no. Morgana picked up her phone and called the number listed at the bottom of the contract. Fedro answered on the second ring. "I was hoping to hear from you today. I need to discuss the terms in person," Morgana said, proud that her voice stayed steady. "Are you available this afternoon?" "For you, Tesoro?" "Always." 3 hours later, Morgana sat in Fedro's private office at Paradiso, the printed contract on the mahogany desk between them. He'd been working when she arrived, sleeves rolled up to reveal tattoos that wound up his forearms in elaborate geometric patterns. Now he leaned back in his leather chair, perfectly still, completely focused on her in that unnerving way he had. "You have concerns," he said. "Not a question. This is an extraordinary amount of money for one designer. It's exactly what you're worth." He said it like he was stating the price of bread, simple and inarguable. "Possibly less." "Mr. Sal." Morgana forced herself to meet his eyes. "This contract would make me exclusively your designer. I'd have to refuse all other clients. What if you don't have enough projects to justify this kind of investment? What if you get bored with having me around?" Something dangerous flickered across his face at that last question. "I own 23 properties across New York. Restaurants, clubs, residential buildings, a hotel in Tribeca that desperately needs your attention. Some I use for business, some are personal holdings. All of them need the kind of transformation you create." He leaned forward slightly. "You'll have more work than you can handle, Tesoro." "That's not the question you really want to ask me." Morgana's fingers twisted together in her lap. "Why me? You could hire any designer in the city. Firms with more resources, more staff, more connections." "Because you understand sanctuary," Fedro said quietly. "You know what it means to need a place where you're safe, where you don't have to apologize for existing, where you can breathe without watching a clock." His dark eyes held hers. "And because I want your brilliance working for someone who values it instead of someone who exploits it while calling it family obligation." The air left Morgana's lungs. He wasn't even pretending this was just about design work. "My mother has connections," she said softly. "Most of my clients come through her referrals. If I sign this and work exclusively for you, she'll be furious. She'll cut me off from her network." "Good." The word was sharp, final. "Let her keep her network of people who think your talent should be free and your body should be hidden. You don't need her referrals anymore, Morgana. You never did. You just thought you did because she spent 30 years convincing you that you were lucky anyone wanted your work at all." Morgana's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this man who somehow saw through every defense she'd spent a lifetime building. "What do you actually want from me?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Because this feels like more than a business arrangement. It is more." Fedro stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace she'd noticed the first time she saw him. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "I want beautiful spaces designed by the most talented woman I've ever encountered. I want to watch you work without fear, without running home to beat a curfew, without shrinking yourself to fit into rooms that should expand to hold you." He paused. "And yes, I want you to stop giving pieces of yourself to people who've convinced you that you're too much when you're actually not nearly enough for anyone with sense to appreciate." "This is insane," Morgana whispered. "Perhaps. Sign it anyway." She should have asked more questions. Should have had a lawyer review the terms. Should have done something rational and professional and self-protective. Instead, Morgana picked up the pen he offered and signed her name on the line marked contractor. Fedro countered signed immediately, then pulled out his phone. "Luca, wire the retainer. Now." He ended the call and looked back at her. "The money will be in your business account within the hour." Just like that. Just like that. He returned to his chair, but his eyes never left her face. "Now, your first project. I'm buying a townhouse in the West Village. For stories, original details from 1892, and absolutely no idea what to do with it. It's yours. Full creative control, unlimited budget. Make it somewhere you'd want to live." "Somewhere I want to live," Morgana repeated, confused. "See, because in 3 months, when your mother's lease expires on that guest house prison, you're going to need somewhere to go." His smile was slight, dangerous, absolutely certain. "And I take care of what's mine, Tesoro. Starting now." Morgana's phone buzzed. A notification from her bank. Deposit received, $500,000. She stared at the screen, then at Fedro, then back at the screen. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something bigger, more terrifying. It was the beginning of freedom, and freedom was the most dangerous thing her family had never let her taste. "I don't know how to thank you," she finally managed. "Don't thank me." Fedro's voice was soft, but absolute. "Just promise me you'll never run home afraid again. That's all the thanks I need." Morgana nodded, not trusting her voice. In her pocket, her phone buzzed again. Another message from her mother, probably with more demands disguised as family loyalty. For the first time in her life, Morgana didn't even look at it. She had work to do, real work. For someone who just paid her $500,000 to prove she was worth exactly that much. And maybe, just maybe, worth even more. The invitation came 2 weeks later, handwritten on heavy cardstock that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. Dinner, Saturday at 8. A car will collect you at 7:30. Dress, however, makes you feel beautiful. Morgana stared at the note for 20 minutes, her stomach twisting itself into complicated knots. This wasn't a business dinner. Business dinners came through email with calendar invites and agendas. This was something else entirely, something that made her hands sweat and her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with professional anxiety. She called Trevor in a panic. "He wants to take me to dinner. Your extremely wealthy, extremely attractive client wants to take you to dinner." Trevor's voice was maddeningly calm. "And this is a problem because it's not about work. Because he said a dress, however, makes me feel beautiful. And Trevor, I don't know how to do that. I don't have clothes that make me feel beautiful. I have clothes that make me feel like I'm taking up less space." There was a long pause. Then Trevor said quietly, "We're going shopping. Right now. And we're using some of that retainer money to buy you something that actually fits your body instead of apologizing for it." Saturday evening arrived faster than Morgana wanted. She stood in front of her mirror wearing a dress Trevor had insisted on, deep emerald silk that hugged her curves instead of hiding them, and tried not to hyperventilate. Her mother's voice echoed in her head like it always did. "That's too tight. You're showing too much. People will think you're trying too hard. Don't you want to look elegant?" Her phone buzzed. "The car is here." Morgana grabbed her clutch and left before she could change into something safer. The restaurant Fedro had chosen wasn't one of the trendy Manhattan hotspots her mother favored. Instead, the car pulled up to a brownstone in the West Village with no sign, no crowd, just a discreet door and a man who opened it like he'd been expecting her specifically. Inside was intimate and warm, exposed brick and candlelight, and the kind of quiet that only came from serious money buying absolute privacy. Fedro waited at a table near the back, and when he saw her, something shifted in his expression that made her breath catch. He stood as she approached, and his eyes traveled over her dress in a way that should have made her self-conscious, but somehow didn't. "Perfetto," he said softly, pulling out her chair. "You look like a Renaissance painting come to life." Morgana sat, hyper-aware of how the dress pulled across her hips, how the neckline showed the full curve of her breasts. "It's probably too much. It's not nearly enough." Fedro settled across from her, and the intensity of his attention made her feel like they were the only two people in existence. "Though I suspect you've spent your whole life being told that you're too much of everything, when the truth is you're exactly right, and everyone else is just too small to see it." Before Morgana could respond, staff appeared with wine and bread and small plates of things that smelled divine. Fedro waved away menus. "I asked the chef to prepare his favorites," he explained. "Unless you have restrictions?" "No, I just—" Morgana hesitated. "I usually don't eat much at dinner. Trying to be good." Good according to whom? The question landed like a small bomb. Morgana found herself thinking about every diet her mother had suggested, every comment about portion sizes, every meal eaten in secret because wanting food felt like proof of her failure. According to everyone, I guess. Then everyone is wrong. Fedro poured her wine, the movement graceful and deliberate. "Tonight, you eat whatever you want, however much you want, and I want to watch you enjoy every bite." "That's a weird thing to want," Morgana said, trying for lightness. "Perhaps. but I find very few things more beautiful than watching someone experience pleasure without shame. His eyes held hers. And you've been taught to be ashamed of taking up space, of wanting things, of feeding yourself. That ends tonight. The first course arrived. Burrata with heirloom tomatoes and basil that tasted like summer. Morgana took a careful small bite. More, Phaedro said quietly. I'm savoring it. You're rationing it. There's a difference. He gestured her plate. Tesoro, there is more food coming. You don't have to make one bite last forever because you're afraid of being judged for taking a second. Something in Morgana's chest cracked. She took a real bite, let herself actually taste it, and the flavor was so intense she made an involuntary sound of pleasure. Phaedro's expression turned predatory. There, that's what I wanted to see. Course after course arrived. Handmade pasta with truffle cream sauce. Branzino grilled with lemon and herbs. Vegetables roasted in olive oil until they were caramelized perfection. And Phaedro watched her eat all of it with the focus most men reserve for watching sports or counting money. Why do you care whether I eat? Morgana finally asked, halfway through the pasta course. Because feeding someone is intimacy, Phaedro said simply. Because watching you deny yourself things you want hurts me in ways I don't fully understand. Because your body is extraordinary and you treat it like an enemy that needs to be punished into submission. My body is not extraordinary. It's too much, too big, too soft, too visible. Your body, Phaedro interrupted, his voice dropping to something dark and absolute, is a masterpiece that lesser people tried to convince you was a mistake. Your curves are art. Your softness is luxury. And the fact that you're visible, that you take up space, that you can't be ignored or overlooked. He leaned forward slightly. That terrifies people who've built their lives on being safely average. So they try to make you small. But Morgana, you were never meant to be small. Tears burned behind Morgana's eyes. No one had ever talked about her body like it was something other than a problem to be solved. I don't know how to believe that. Then let me believe it for you until you can believe it yourself. Phaedro reached across the table, his tattooed hand covering hers. Finish your pasta. Let yourself enjoy it. Let yourself take up space at this table, in this room, in the world. That's all I'm asking. So Morgana did. She finished the pasta and the fish and the roasted vegetables. When dessert came, a chocolate torte that probably had 1,000 calories per slice, she didn't even pretend to resist. And Phaedro watched her eat every bite with an expression that made her feel like she was doing something sacred instead of just having dinner. Good, he asked when she'd finished. Extraordinary, Morgana admitted, echoing his earlier word. Like you. He signaled for the check. And now I'm going to take you home before I say things that will terrify you. What kind of things? Phaedro stood, offered his hand to help her up. When she rose, he kept holding it, kept her close enough that she could smell his cologne and feel the heat of him. Things like how I've thought about nothing but you for 3 weeks. Things like how watching you eat made me want to feed you every meal for the rest of your life just to see that expression of unguarded pleasure. Things like how I want to systematically destroy every voice in your head that tells you you're anything less than perfect. Morgana's breath caught. That's terrifying. I know. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. That's why I'm taking you home now. But Morgana, this isn't the end. This is the beginning. And by the time I'm done, you're going to know exactly how extraordinary you are. The car ride back to Westchester was quiet, charged with things neither of them said. When they pulled up to her parents' estate, Phaedro walked her to the guest house door, even though his driver waited. Thank you, Morgana whispered, for dinner, for making me feel like wanting things wasn't wrong. Wanting things is never wrong. Phaedro lifted her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles that felt more intimate than anything else that had happened that night. Dream about what else you want, Tesoro. And next time, I'll make sure you get that too. He left her standing in the doorway, heart racing, body full of good food and possibility. Inside, Morgana caught sight of herself in the mirror. Same dress, same body, same face. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in her life, she looked at her reflection and didn't immediately catalog everything that needed to be fixed. She just looked, and maybe, just maybe, she saw a little of what Phaedro saw when he watched her across that table. Something extraordinary after all. The confession came 3 weeks later, not during one of their increasingly frequent dinners or site visits, but on a random Tuesday afternoon when Morgana's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. She was at the West Village townhouse, the one Phaedro had told her to design like she'd lived there herself, standing in what would become the master bedroom and staring at paint samples without really seeing them. Her phone had been buzzing all morning with messages from her mother, each one more demanding than the last, until finally she turned it face down on the windowsill and tried to focus on work. Phaedro found her there, surrounded by fabric swatches and tile samples, her shoulders curved inward in that way he'd learned meant she was trying to disappear. "What happened?" he asked without preamble. "Nothing. I'm just trying to decide between these two grays." Her voice was too bright, too professional, the mask she wore when she was barely holding together. "Morgana." He said her name like a command. "What happened?" She turned to face him, and he saw the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "My mother came to the guest house this morning. She wanted to know where the retainer money came from. Apparently my sisters told her I've been refusing their calls about helping with Cordelia's engagement party. And she informed me that my rent is increasing to $3,000 a month starting next week. Says it's a market rate adjustment." Morgana's laugh was brittle. "Also, since I'm clearly making so much money now, she expects me to contribute to the household expenses. Another $1,000 a month for utilities and grounds maintenance." Phaedro went very still in the way that made his men nervous. $4,000 a month total. Plus the late fees if I miss curfew. Plus the family events I'm expected to design for free, because apparently having one successful contract means I owe them even more than before. Morgana's hands twisted together. She said families support each other. I should be grateful they're letting me stay at all given how much space I take up. "Space you take up," Phaedro repeated, his accent thickening. She didn't mean it like that. She just meant the guest house is valuable property, and I should appreciate that they're not charging me even more. The words came out automatic, rehearsed, the same justifications Morgana had been telling herself for years. "How long have you been paying them rent?" The question was quiet, but something in his tone made Morgana's throat tighten. "Since I turned 25. They said it was time I learned financial responsibility." "And your sisters?" "Cordelia is 27. She lives in the main house, second floor, the suite with the bay windows and the walk-in closet. Jasmine is 28. She has the entire third floor." Morgana looked at her hands. "Neither of them pay rent. My mother says they don't need to because they're planning weddings, and that's expensive enough. But you pay rent while also providing free design services for their events. It's not free exactly. I mean, they're family. You do things for family." Phaedro moved closer, his presence filling the empty room. "Tesoro, look at me." When she did, his dark eyes were burning with something that looked like controlled fury. "Your sisters don't pay rent. What size are they?" Morgana blinked at the apparent non sequitur. What dress size are your sisters?" "I don't see what that has to do with anything." "Humor me. Cordelia is a size 4. Jasmine fluctuates between a 2 and a 4 depending on the season." Morgana's voice went flat. "They both do Pilates 5 times a week and only eat salad for lunch. My mother is very proud of their discipline." "And you're size 16, 18 in some designers." The admission felt like pulling glass from a wound. "I know where you're going with this, and it's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Phaedro's voice was soft, deadly. "Your parents charge you $4,000 a month to live in a guest house on property that should partially belong to you through your grandmother's trust. They charge you late fees for missing a curfew designed to control your life. They demand free labor for events that benefit everyone but you. And your sisters, who are smaller, who fit your mother's acceptable definition of a daughter, live rent-free in the main house." He paused. "That's not about financial responsibility. That's about punishment. You don't understand. It's complicated with families like mine. There are expectations, social pressures. I understand perfectly." Phaedro stepped closer, close enough that Morgana had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "I understand that your mother has spent 30 years making you pay in every possible way for having the audacity to exist in a body she finds unacceptable. Money, labor, dignity, freedom. You've been paying for the crime of taking up space since you were old enough to understand that your body was different from your sister's. Morgana's vision blurred. She's not a monster. She just wants what's best for us. What's best for you would be a mother who celebrates you instead of charges you rent for existing. What's best for you would be sisters who pay for your talent instead of exploiting it. What's best for you would be a family that doesn't measure your worth by the size of your dress or the shape of your body. Stop. The word came out broken. Please just stop. Why? Because it hurts to hear? Good. It should hurt. You should be angry, Morgana. Furious. Instead, you're standing here defending people who've built a financial prison designed specifically to keep you small and grateful and desperate enough to accept crumbs while they feast. What do you want me to say? Tears were sliding down her cheeks now, hot and bitter. That you're right? That my family has been punishing me for being fat since I was 13? That I've known it the whole time and kept paying them anyway because I was terrified of being completely alone? Yes, Phaedro said simply. Say exactly that. Say it out loud. Stop pretending this is normal. It's not normal. Morgana's voice cracked. None of it is normal. I pay my parents $4,000 a month for a guest house while my skinny sisters live for free in rooms twice the size of mine. I design venues for their events without charging because I'm afraid they'll cut me off from their social circle and my business will collapse. I follow a curfew like I'm a child because one time I was late and my mother added $1,000 to my rent and told me I was lucky she didn't evict me. She was sobbing now, years of carefully controlled hurt pouring out. I know it's not normal. I know I'm being used. I just don't know how to stop. Phaedro pulled her against his chest, his arms coming around her solid and certain. You stop by leaving, by letting that contract I gave you be your freedom instead of just your income. By understanding that you don't need their approval or their social connections or their permission to exist. I don't have anywhere else to go. Yes, you do. His hand came up to cradle the back of her head, fingers gentle in her hair. The townhouse you're designing? It's yours. I bought it for you. The deed will transfer to your name the day that lease expires. Morgana pulled back, staring at him through tears. What? I bought you a house, Tesoro. For stories in the West Village, your name on the deed, no rent, no curfew, no one to answer to accept yourself. His thumb brushed away her tears. I told you to design it like you'd live there, because you will live there. You just didn't know it yet. That's insane. You can't just buy someone a house. I can. I did. And before you argue, understand this. His voice dropped to something fierce and protective. You've been paying for pain your entire life. Paying to exist, paying to be tolerated, paying for every inch of space your beautiful body takes up. That ends now. From this moment forward, the only thing you pay for is what you actually want. Everything else is a gift you've already earned just by surviving a family that should have cherished you. Morgana couldn't speak, could barely breathe. The weight of what he was offering, of what he'd already done, was too enormous to process. Why? She finally whispered. Because you matter, Phaedro said simply. Because watching you pay rent to people who should be paying you is unbearable. Because you deserve a home that's actually yours, not a guest house prison with a curfew. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. And because I'm a selfish man who wants you close, safe, and finally free enough to realize how extraordinary you actually are. In Morgana's pocket, her phone buzzed again. Another message from her mother, probably with more demands disguised as family obligation. This time, Morgana pulled it out and turned it off completely. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, what? Okay, I'll take the house. I'll leave. I'll stop paying for the crime of existing. She looked up at him, something fierce and terrified and hopeful burning in her chest. But Phaedro, if you're going to save me, you have to promise you'll still be there when I figure out how to save myself. His smile was slow, dangerous, absolutely certain. Tesoro, I'm not saving you. I'm just removing the obstacles so you can finally see what I've seen from the beginning. He pulled her close again. You were never the one who needed saving. You just needed someone to stop charging you rent for breathing. The wedding demand came exactly 1 week later, delivered not through a phone call or even a text, but through Cordelia herself showing up at the West Village townhouse with a binder thick enough to be used as a weapon. Morgana was measuring windows when her sister walked in like she owned the place, 4-inch heels clicking on the original hardwood floors. Behind her trailed her fiancé Marcus, who had the uncomfortable expression of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "This is cute," Cordelia said, glancing around with the dismissive tone she'd perfected over years of sorority life and country club brunches. "Very bohemian. I can see why you're so excited about it." Morgana set down her tape measure carefully. "Cordelia, I wasn't expecting you." "Well, you haven't been answering my calls, so I had to track you down. Mom gave me the address." Cordelia dropped the binder on what would eventually be a dining table, but was currently a sheet of plywood on sawhorses. "We need to talk about my wedding." "Your engagement party, you mean?" "No, the actual wedding. March 15th. I know it's only 5 months away, but Marcus's family has this connection to the plaza, and we managed to book the grand ballroom on a cancellation." Cordelia flipped open the binder to reveal page after page of magazine clippings and Pinterest screenshots. "I need you to design everything. Full coordination, obviously." Morgana's stomach dropped. "Cordelia, a plaza wedding is a 100-person minimum. That's months of work. I'd have to bring in additional staff, rent equipment, coordinate with at least a dozen vendors." "I know. That's why I'm giving you 5 whole months." Cordelia smiled brightly. "Mom said you'd do it as your wedding gift to us. Family helps family, right?" "My wedding gift." Morgana's voice came out flat. "You want me to design and coordinate a plaza wedding, which would normally cost somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 for free." "It's not free, it's family." Cordelia's tone took on that edge their mother used when she was about to make disappointment sound like concern. "Unless you're saying your sister's wedding isn't important enough for you to make time. I mean, I know you're busy with your new client, but surely family comes first." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Delia, maybe we should discuss budget." "There's no budget to discuss. Morgana's my sister." Cordelia turned back to Morgana, her expression hardening. "And after everything her family has done for you, letting you live in the guest house all these years, introducing you to clients, supporting your little business, I think this is the least you could do." "The guest house I pay $3,000 a month for," Morgana said quietly. "Oh, please. That's barely market rate. Do you know what it costs to maintain that property? The landscaping alone is $15,000 a year." Cordelia flipped through her binder. "Anyway, I'm thinking blush and gold for the color palette. Very romantic. And I want those huge floral installations you did for the Rothschild wedding. The ones that were in town and country." Morgana felt a familiar weight settling over her shoulders, that old instinct to make herself smaller, to agree, to take on more than she could handle just to avoid confrontation. She opened her mouth to say something, she didn't know what, when a voice from the doorway made them all turn. "I'm afraid Ms. Andrizzi's schedule is fully booked through next year." Fedro stood in the entrance, perfectly tailored as always, his presence filling the space in a way that made Cordelia take an involuntary step back. His eyes swept over the scene with predatory assessment, taking in Morgana's pale face, Cordelia's aggressive posture, the binder full of demands. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Cordelia asked, though her tone suggested she knew exactly who he was and was intimidated by it. "Fedro Sal, Ms. Andrizzi's primary client." He moved into the room with that careful grace that made dangerous men look casual. "And the owner of this property." "Oh." Cordelia's eyes widened slightly. She'd clearly heard about him, probably from her mother's social circle, where his name carried weight and whispered warnings. "Well, I'm sure you can spare her for family obligations. This is my wedding we're talking about." "Congratulations." Fedro's tone made it clear he couldn't care less. "However, Ms. Andrizzi is under exclusive contract to my organization. Any outside projects require my approval and come with a consultation fee." "A consultation fee? For family?" Cordelia's voice pitched higher. "Morgana, are you seriously going to let him tell you that you can't help with my wedding?" Morgana looked between her sister and Fedro, feeling like she was watching her life split into 2 paths. One familiar and suffocating, the other terrifying and unknown. The consultation fee for a project of that scope would be $10,000, Fedro continued smoothly. plus materials, staffing costs, and coordination fees. I'd estimate the total around $65,000 for a plaza wedding. We could draw up a proper contract if you'd like to proceed. Cordelia's face went red. That's absurd. She's my sister, and you're asking for 2 months of her time and expertise. Phaedro's voice never rose, but something in it made Marcus take his fiancée's arm in warning. Family or not, labor has value. Or do you work for free at your marketing job? That's different. Ow! Because Morgana's family. Cordelia turned to her sister, her expression shifting to wounded betrayal. I cannot believe you're doing this. After everything we've done for you, Mom is going to be so disappointed. The words hit exactly where they were designed to hit. Morgana felt herself starting to fold, to apologize, to agree to anything that would make that expression of hurt disappear from her sister's face. Then Phaedro's hand settled on her shoulder, warm and grounding. Ms. Andrizzi is under no obligation to provide free services, family or otherwise, he said quietly. If you'd like to hire her professionally, we can discuss terms. If not, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We have work to complete. Cordelia stared at Morgana, waiting for her to contradict him, to apologize, to cave the way she always had. Morgana met her sister's eyes and felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been bending for 30 years, finally snapping back into place. He's right, she said, her voice barely above a whisper but steady. If you want me to design your wedding, it's $65,000. If you want it for free, you'll need to find someone else. Cordelia's mouth fell open. You're joking. I'm not. Wait until Mom hears about this. Cordelia snatched up her binder, her face ugly with anger now. You're being selfish and ungrateful. And honestly, Morgana, I'm glad you won't be doing my wedding. I don't want someone so unprofessional involved anyway. She stormed out, Marcus trailing behind with an apologetic glance that Morgana barely registered. The silence after they left was deafening. Morgana stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might be sick. She just said no to her sister, had put a price on her labor, had chosen herself over family obligation for the first time in her life. I think I'm going to throw up, she whispered. You're not. Phaedro's hands settled on her shoulders, turning her to face him. You're going to breathe. You're going to remember that what just happened was you finally standing up for yourself. And you're going to know that I'm very proud of you. She's going to tell my mother. They're going to be furious. Good. Let them be furious. His thumb brushed her cheek, and she realized she was crying. Their anger is proof that you've stopped letting them use you. That's worth celebrating, not mourning. They're going to make my life hell. They were already making your life hell, Tesoro. You were just too busy trying to earn their approval to notice. He pulled her close, let her rest her forehead against his chest. And now you don't have to anymore. Morgana's phone started ringing. Her mother. She let go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Turn it off, Phaedro said quietly. I can't just ignore her. Yes, you can. You can ignore her until you're ready to face her from a position of strength instead of guilt. His hand settled at the base of her spine, protective and possessive. And in the meantime, I'm going to make sure she understands that hurting you has consequences. Morgana pulled back to look at him. What does that mean? It means your family has been getting away with exploitation because no one ever made them pay for it. His smile was cold, calculated, absolutely certain. That's about to change. But first, you need to make a decision. What decision? Whether you want to keep trying to earn their love, or whether you're ready to walk away and let them face what they've done. His eyes held hers. Because Tesoro, you can't do both. Not anymore. Morgana thought about the guest house and the curfew and the $3,000 rent. Thought about her sisters living free while she paid for the crime of existing. Thought about every wedding and party and event she designed for family appreciation that never came. Thought about Phaedro buying her a house just so she'd have somewhere to go when she finally found the courage to leave. I'm ready to walk away, she whispered. Good. Phaedro kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. Then let me handle the rest. Your only job is to keep being brilliant. Mine is making sure no one ever makes you pay for it again. 3 months later, Morgana stood in the bridal suite of the Plaza Hotel, watching her sister spin in a wedding dress that cost more than most people's cars. She'd been summoned that morning with a text from her mother that said only, "Cordelia needs you." Plaza, 9 a.m. Don't be difficult. Morgana had almost ignored it. Should have ignored it. But some deep, wounded part of her still hoped that maybe this time would be different. That maybe refusing to work for free had finally earned her some respect instead of resentment. She should have known better. "You came," Cordelia said, surprised enough to be genuine. She looked beautiful in the way brides always do, all silk and lace and happiness that had nothing to do with Morgana. "I wasn't sure you would. You're still my sister," Morgana said quietly. She'd spent the morning getting ready in her new townhouse, the one with her name on the deed, and no curfew to rush home to, putting on the bridesmaid dress Cordelia had sent over last week. It fit better than the engagement party dress had, though Morgana suspected that was more accident than intention. "Well, I'm glad." Cordelia's smile was tentative. "I know things have been weird between us. Mom's still furious about the whole contract thing, but Marcus convinced me you were right to charge for your work, even if you were being kind of harsh about it." Morgana absorbed that. Kind of harsh, as if setting professional boundaries was something to apologize for. "Your wedding designer did a beautiful job," she said instead, gesturing to the elegant setup visible through the suite windows. "She's fine. Not as good as you would have been, obviously." Cordelia turned back to the mirror, adjusting her veil. "But she worked within the budget, so that's something." The other bridesmaids arrived in a flurry of champagne and perfume, Jasmine among them, and the suite descended into the controlled chaos of final preparations. Morgana helped where she was asked, stayed out of the way when she wasn't, and tried not to notice how everyone else seemed to orbit each other naturally while she remained satellite to their system. Her mother arrived at 11, resplendent in mother-of-the-bride champagne that probably cost what Morgana used to pay in rent for 3 months. She swept into the room like visiting royalty, accepting champagne and distributing air kisses before her eyes finally landed on Morgana. "You're here. No warmth. Just observation. Cordelia asked me to come." "Did she?" Her mother's gaze swept over Morgana's dress, and something disapproving flickered across her face. "Well, I suppose that dress fits better than I expected. Though you might want to be careful about the champagne. Wouldn't want it to be too tight by this afternoon." The room went quiet. That particular species of quiet that happens when everyone hears something cruel but pretends they didn't. "The dress fits fine, Mom," Morgana said evenly. "Of course. I'm just looking out for you." Her mother smiled, that smile that looked like concern but felt like criticism. "You know how you can be about these things." Morgana didn't respond. She'd learned years ago that engaging only gave her mother more ammunition. The ceremony was beautiful in the way plaza weddings always were, all gold and crystal and the kind of elegance money could buy. Morgana stood at the altar with the other bridesmaids, smiled on cue, held Cordelia's bouquet during the vows, and tried to ignore the way her mother kept glancing at her with that expression of vague disappointment. It was during the family photos that everything finally shattered. The photographer had arranged everyone on the grand staircase, the classic shot that would go on mantles and in albums for the next 50 years. Parents in the center, bride and groom on either side, siblings arranged by height and aesthetic appeal. "Perfect," the photographer said, adjusting his camera. "Now, immediate family only for the next series." Morgana started to move into position next to Jasmine when her mother's hand caught her arm. "Morgana, dear, step out for this one." She blinked. "What?" "Just for the immediate family portraits. We need elegant lines for these shots, and with the way that dress fits, you're disrupting the composition." Her mother's voice was pleasant, conversational, like she was discussing flower arrangements instead of excluding her daughter from her own family photos. "You understand." Morgana stood frozen, aware that 60 wedding guests were watching this unfold, aware that her sisters were avoiding her eyes, aware that her father was nodding in agreement like this was perfectly reasonable. "Mom, I'm in the wedding party, and you'll be in the wedding party photos, of course. But for the formal family portraits, we need symmetry, visual balance." Her mother gestured to where Jasmine and Cordelia stood, both slim and perfect in their matching dresses. You see how they create a line? We need to maintain that aesthetic. The aesthetic, Morgana repeated numbly. Don't make this difficult. Think of Cordelia. This is her day. Her mother's smile never wavered, but her eyes had gone hard. Now step aside so we can get these photos done. The reception starts in 40 minutes. Morgana stepped out of the frame, walked down the staircase on shaking legs while the photographer called out poses, and her family smiled like she'd never been standing there at all. She made it to the hallway before the tears started, found a quiet corner near the service entrance where staff rushed past with trays and floral arrangements, where she could fall apart without witnesses. The cream dress that had fit fine that morning suddenly felt like it was suffocating her, crushing her ribs the way her mother's words had crushed something vital in her chest. You're disrupting the composition. Not good enough for family photos. Not the right shape. Not the right size. Not the right daughter. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, thumb hovering over Fedro's contact. He told her call if she needed him. Had made her promise she wouldn't face her family alone anymore. But calling him meant admitting she'd been stupid enough to come here in the first place. Stupid enough to hope. Before she could decide, her father appeared in the hallway. There you are. Your mother's been looking for you. Morgana wiped her eyes quickly. I'm fine. Just needed some air. Good. He looked uncomfortable, the way he always did when forced to actually interact with her. Listen, your mother and I have been discussing your living situation. Something cold settled in Morgana's stomach. What about it? We've decided to sell the guest house. There's a developer interested in the property, and frankly, with Cordelia married now and Jasmine getting serious with that lawyer, we need the space for future grandchildren. He straightened his bow tie, not quite meeting her eyes. You'll need to be out by the end of the month. The end of the month. That's 2 weeks. 3, technically. And honestly, Morgana, you're 30 years old. It's past time you stop depending on family charity. His smile was thin, patronizing. I'm sure that Italian friend of yours can help. You seem to have made quite an impression there. The implication in his tone made her skin crawl. You're evicting me at Cordelia's wedding, after excluding me from family photos. We're not evicting you. We're simply choosing not to renew your lease. There's a difference. Her father checked his watch. Now, the reception's starting soon. Try to compose yourself before you come back in. Your mother doesn't want any drama today. He left her standing there, hollow and shaking, in a hallway that smelled like expensive flowers and casual cruelty. Morgana stared at her phone, at Fedro's contact information, at the choice that had been building for 3 months, finally crystallizing into something clear and absolute. She could go back into that reception, could smile through dinner while her family celebrated a daughter they were proud of, could pretend the last hour hadn't just proven everything Fedro had been saying about them. Or she could make a different choice. Her finger hovered over the call button. Inside the ballroom, she could hear music starting, laughter, the sound of people who belonged, who fit, who would never be told they disrupted the composition. Morgana pressed call. Fedro answered on the first ring. Tesoro, come get me. Her voice cracked on the words. All the tears she'd been holding back finally breaking free. Please, just come get me. Tell me where you are, Kara. I'm already in the car. She gave him the address through sobs, told him about the photos and the eviction and the casual destruction of every hope she'd been stupid enough to hold on to. 20 minutes, he said, his voice that dangerous combination of soft and lethal she'd come to recognize. And Morgana, when I arrive, stay exactly where you are. I want them to see who comes for you. The call ended. Morgana slid down the wall to sit on the floor in her bridesmaid dress, cream silk pooling around her, mascara ruining the bodice she'd been so careful about that morning. And she waited for the Italian Mafia boss who'd promised to burn down her mother's world. Because maybe some families deserve to burn. 22 minutes later, Morgana heard them before she saw them. The deep growl of expensive engines, the screech of tires on the plaza's circular drive, the kind of arrival that made valets nervous and security guards reach for radios. She pushed herself up from the floor, her dress wrinkled and tear-stained, and moved to the window overlooking the entrance. 3 black SUVs pulled up in formation, the kind of vehicles that screamed money and danger in equal measure. The center one stopped directly in front of the main doors, and Morgana watched Fedro step out in a three-piece charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than the wedding she'd just been excluded from. His tattoos were visible at his neck and hands, dark ink against olive skin, and even from this distance, she could see the controlled fury in the way he moved. Behind him, 6 men in tactical suits fanned out with the precision of a military operation. He was coming for her, and he was making sure everyone knew it. Morgana made her way back toward the ballroom on shaking legs, arriving just as Fedro walked through the main entrance. The reception was in full swing, guests mingling with champagne and appetizers, a string quartet playing something elegant and forgettable. Fedro didn't pause to take in the scene, didn't stop when the plaza staff tried to politely intercept him. He simply walked through the space like he owned it, his security detail creating a path, his eyes scanning the room until they found Morgana standing near the service entrance. The room went quiet in waves. First the people nearest the door, then spreading outward as heads turned and conversations died. By the time Fedro reached the center of the ballroom, you could have heard a champagne flute drop. Cordelia's face had gone white. Jasmine looked terrified, and Morgana's mother, standing near the bride's table with a glass of wine, went absolutely still. Fedro's eyes never left Morgana's mother as he crossed the dance floor. When he reached her, he didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. "Mrs. Indrizzi, we need to talk. I don't know who you think you are, but this is a private event." Her mother's voice was ice over panic. "You need to leave immediately, or I'll call security. By all means, call them." Fedro's smile was a predator's smile. "I own the security company the plaza contracts with. We'll see who they remove." The color drained from her mother's face. Around them, guests were pulling out phones, whispering the kind of scandal that would feed the society pages for weeks. "What do you want?" Her mother's voice dropped. Trying for control she'd already lost. "I want to discuss your treatment of your daughter." Fedro gestured toward where Morgana stood, and suddenly every eye in the room was on her. On her tear-stained dress and her ruined makeup, and the evidence of exactly what this family had done. The daughter you excluded from family photographs today. The daughter you evicted during her sister's wedding reception. How dare you come into my daughter's wedding and make accusations? Her mother's voice rose, playing to the crowd. "We've done nothing but support Morgana her entire life. You charge her rent for a guest house on property purchased with her inheritance." Fedro's voice never rose above conversational level, but it cut through the room like a blade. "You exploit her labor. You exclude her from family events while demanding she provides services for free. And today, you told her she ruins the composition of your photographs." Gasps rippled through the guests. Morgana saw her father try and make his way over, Marcus pulling Cordelia back, Jasmine hiding behind her date. "You don't know what you're talking about," her mother said, but her voice shook now. "Family matters are private. Then let's discuss business instead." Fedro pulled out his phone, pulled up something, turned it so her mother could see the screen. "This is the building where your husband's investment firm operates. I purchased it 6 months ago. And this one, where your interior design consultancy has its offices. Also mine. And the commercial properties your family trust manages. I now own 70% of those buildings." Morgana watched her mother's face cycle through confusion, realization, horror. "You're lying. I don't lie about business, Mrs. Indrizzi. I simply prepare." He put his phone away. "By Monday morning, your family's businesses will have no physical premises unless I decide otherwise. Your husband's firm, your consultancy, all those lovely little revenue streams you've used to fund this lifestyle while charging your daughter rent, gone. You can't do this." Her father had arrived now, face red with champagne and rage. "This is blackmail. Extortion. This is consequences." Fedro finally looked at him, and something in that gaze made Morgana's father take a step back. "You spent 30 years making Morgana pay for existing in a body you find unacceptable, charging her rent, exploiting her talent, teaching her that love comes with invoices and late fees and the constant threat of homelessness." His voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "That ends now. She's our daughter. We can discipline her however we see fit. She's a grown woman who deserves better than parents who treat her like a financial asset to be managed." Phaedro gestured around the room. "And everyone here now knows exactly what kind of people you are. That's punishment enough." He turned his attention back to Morgana's mother. "But if you ever contact her again, if you ever demand her labor or her money or her presence at your events, I will systematically dismantle everything your family has built. I will buy your mortgages and call them due. I will purchase your country club memberships and revoke them. I will make sure every person in your social circle knows that you abuse your daughter financially and emotionally." "This is insane," her mother whispered. "Over what?" "Some hurt feelings. Over 30 years of systematic cruelty disguised as family obligation." Phaedro's accent thickened, his fury barely contained now. "Over telling a brilliant woman she disrupts compositions. Overcharging her rent in a house that should be partially hers. Over making her believe she has to earn the love you should have given freely." He turned then, his back to Morgana's parents in the ultimate dismissal, and walked straight to where she stood frozen near the service entrance. The room parted for him like water. When he reached her, his expression softened completely. "Ready to go home, Tesoro?" Morgana nodded, not trusting her voice. Phaedro took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders, covering the tear-stained dress. Then he offered his hand, and she took it without hesitation. They walked out together through the silent ballroom, past her family and the wedding guests, and the ruins of every relationship she'd spent 30 years trying to maintain. Phaedro's security detail fell into formation around them, and no one tried to stop them. At the door, Morgana glanced back once. Saw her mother's face twisted with rage and humiliation. Saw her father on his phone, probably already calling lawyers who couldn't help him. Saw Cordelia crying, her perfect wedding ruined by the sister who'd finally stopped apologizing for existing. Morgana felt nothing but relief. Outside, Phaedro guided her into the center SUV, sliding in beside her. The door closed, cutting off the chaos, cocooning them in leather and tinted windows and blessed silence. "Where are we going?" Morgana asked. "Home." Phaedro pulled her against his side, his arms solid around her shoulders. "To the townhouse with your name on the deed, where no one charges you rent or gives you curfews or makes you watch clocks." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Where you can finally stop paying for the crime of being exactly who you are." The SUV pulled away from the plaza, from the wedding reception and the family that had never deserved her, carrying her toward a life where taking up space wasn't something to apologize for. And for the first time in 30 years, Morgana and Drizzy took a full breath without fear of what it would cost her. "Thank you," she whispered against Phaedro's shoulder. "Don't thank me yet, Tesoro." His voice was dark velvet and promise. "We're just getting started. By the time I'm done, your family will understand that hurting you was the most expensive mistake they ever made." Morgana should have told him it was enough, that she didn't need revenge, just freedom. But she was tired of being the bigger person while her family made her smaller. So instead, she settled deeper into his embrace and let herself imagine what it would feel like to finally matter more than their reputation. It felt like coming home. Morgana woke 3 days later in a bedroom she didn't immediately recognize, wrapped in sheets that felt like silk and smelled like cedar and something distinctly Phaedro. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, and for a disorienting moment, she thought she'd overslept, that she'd missed curfew, that there would be consequences. Then she remembered. No more curfew. No more guest house. No more family. She sat up slowly, taking in the space. This wasn't the West Village townhouse she'd been designing. This was somewhere else entirely. Bigger. More opulent. The kind of bedroom that belonged in magazines about how the other half lived. A knock at the door, then Phaedro entered carrying a tray. He was dressed casually in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, his tattoos on full display, and he looked at her like she was the most important thing in his world. "You're awake. Good." He set the tray on the bedside table. Coffee, fresh fruit, pastries that smelled like butter in heaven. "You slept 14 hours. Where am I?" "My estate, 20 minutes north of the city." He sat on the edge of the bed, his hand coming up to brush hair from her face. You fell asleep in the car after the wedding. I brought you here instead of the townhouse because I wanted you somewhere I could keep watch. Make sure you were safe. Morgana looked down at herself. She was wearing a soft cotton nightgown she didn't recognize, her makeup cleaned off, her hair wrapped in silk. Did you? Luca's wife helped. I stayed outside the door. Fedro's smile was slight. I'm many things, Tesoro, but I don't undress unconscious women, even ones I'm desperately in love with. The words landed between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. You're what? In love with you. He said it simply, like he was discussing the weather. I've been since I watched you command my ballroom like a general leading troops. But I didn't want to say it until you were free enough to hear it without filtering it through fear or obligation or gratitude. Morgana's throat closed. Fedro, I don't know if I can give you what you want. I'm broken and messy, and I just imploded my entire family at my sister's wedding. You're not broken. You're recovering from 30 years of systematic abuse. His thumb traced her cheekbone. And you didn't implode anything. They did that themselves. I just made sure everyone saw it. My phone has 300 messages. She turned it on once yesterday, immediately regretted it. Texts from cousins and aunts and family friends, some supportive, most horrified. Her mother's voicemails had graduated from fury to threats to manipulation, so transparent it would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Block them all. Some of them are people I care about. Then they'll find other ways to reach you if they truly care. But Tesoro, anyone who knew what your family was doing to you and said nothing, they don't deserve access to you now. Fedro poured her coffee, added cream the way she liked it without asking. Your only job right now is to heal. Everything else is noise. Morgana took the coffee, let the warmth settle into her hands. My mother's already trying to spin this. I saw a post from one of her friends about how I caused a scene at Cordelia's wedding out of jealousy. I know. Luca's been monitoring their social media. Fedro's expression went cold. It won't work. By now, half the guests from that wedding have shared what actually happened. The truth is spreading faster than they can contain it. And your threat about their businesses? Not a threat. A promise I'm currently keeping. He settled back against the headboard, pulling her against his side like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Your father's firm got an eviction notice yesterday. Your mother's consultancy is facing the same. And the trust properties? I've started terminating leases across the board. They'll have 90 days to relocate. Morgana should have felt guilty. Should have felt something other than the grim satisfaction currently warming her chest. That's going to destroy them financially. Good. Maybe they'll understand what it feels like to lose security because someone with power decided they weren't acceptable enough. His hand settled on her hip, warm and possessive. Though I suspect they'll just find someone else to blame. People like your parents rarely achieve self-awareness. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee and watching morning light paint the room gold. Morgana tried to imagine what happened next. Who she was without the weight of her family's expectations. What it meant to exist without constantly calculating costs and consequences. I don't know how to do this, she finally said. Do what? Be free. Just exist without apologizing for it. She looked up at him. For 30 years, my entire life has been about making myself smaller, more acceptable, less expensive. I don't know who I am without that. Then we'll figure out together. Fedro shifted, turning so he could look at her properly. But Morgana, I need you to understand something. I don't want you smaller. I don't want you different. I don't want you to change a single thing about your body or your voice or the space you take up in the world. Everyone wants me different. Everyone is wrong. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing across her full bottom lip. You know what I see when I look at you? I see a woman who survived a family designed to break her and came out brilliant anyway. I see curves that make Renaissance masters look like amateurs. I see someone who creates sanctuary for others because she understands what it means to need refuge. His voice dropped. I see the only woman I've ever wanted to build a life with. Morgana's eyes burned. I'm still going to be a mess. I'm going to have moments where I believe their voices instead of yours. Where I apologize for existing or try to make myself smaller because that's what 30 years of conditioning does. I know, and I'll be there for every single one of those moments, reminding you of the truth until you can hold it yourself. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. That's what love is to Zoro. Not finding someone perfect, finding someone worth fighting for, even when the fight is against the lies they've been taught about themselves. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Another piece of her old life trying to pull her back. They're not going to stop, Morgana said. Probably not. Desperate people rarely do. Phaedro took her phone, turned it off completely, set it aside. But you don't have to respond. You don't have to engage. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm anymore. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm being selfish and cruel and everything they're saying I am? Then you're finally being as selfish and cruel as they've been to you for 3 decades. Which means you're not even close to even. He pulled her fully into his lap, his arms coming around her solid and certain. But you're not being cruel. You're being self-protective. There's a difference. Morgana buried her face in his neck, breathing in the scent of him, letting herself believe that maybe this was real. That maybe someone could actually love her without conditions or invoices or late fees attached. I'm terrified, she whispered. Of what? That I'll wake up and this will be another cage. That you'll decide I'm too much after all. That freedom is just another word for alone. Never. The word was absolute. You're not too much. You're not too big. You're not too loud or too visible or too anything except too good for people who can't see your value. His lips found hers, soft and promising and entirely hers. And you're never going to be alone again unless you choose to be. That's my only definition of you, Tesoro. The woman I choose. Every day, exactly as you are. Outside the window, Morgana could see manicured grounds stretching toward a distant tree line. Could see what looked like gardens and a pool and the kind of space she'd never been allowed to take up. Show me, she said quietly. Show you what? Your world. The life you want to build. Help me believe this is real. Phaedro stood, lifting her with him like she weighed nothing, and Morgana wrapped her legs around his waist without thinking. He carried her to the window, held her there while they looked out at the estate together. This is yours if you want it, he said. All of it. Or we find somewhere else. Or we split time between here and the townhouse. Or we travel. Or we do whatever makes you feel safest and most yourself. His arms tightened around her. I don't need you to fit into my world, Morgana. I need you to help me build a world that fits you. And standing there in his arms, looking out at a future that suddenly felt possible instead of terrifying, Morgana and Drizzy finally let herself believe that maybe taking up space wasn't a crime. Maybe it was just proof that she existed. And maybe for the first time in her life, that was enough. More than enough. Everything.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.